In Nigeria, judicial corruption has led to widespread distrust in the legal system. One report by the U.S. Department of State indicated that corruption is particularly pervasive at election tribunals and in the corruption trials of highly politically exposed persons. Imagine a country where justice is sold to the highest bidder, where the scales of justice tip not because of the truth, but because of bribes. This is not a fictional story. It is the harsh reality for millions of Nigerians. The judiciary, a cornerstone of democracy, is crumbling under the weight of corruption. Today, we are lifting the veil on a system meant to protect, but which has been manipulated to oppress. Stay with us as we uncover the truth and expose those responsible. In the heart of Nigeria, where the judiciary is meant to be a pillar of fairness and integrity, a pervasive shadow looms. Corruption has infiltrated the very courts entrusted to uphold justice, leading to a system where verdicts can be bought and the powerful evade accountability. To truly understand the depth of corruption within the Nigerian judicial system, we must first understand how the system is designed to function. The judiciary is often called the last hope of the common man. It is a vital institution in upholding the rule of law and ensuring equality before it. But what happens when this last hope fails? What do we do when those who are supposed to deliver justice are compromised? Nigeria's judiciary is built on a foundation laid during the colonial era, modeled after the British common law system. Today, it operates under the 1999 Constitution, with a multi-tiered structure, the Supreme Court at the apex, followed by the Court of Appeal, the federal and state high courts, and several other specialized courts such as the Sharia and customary courts. Each of these plays a critical role in interpreting and enforcing the law. The main job of the judiciary is clear: to interpret the law impartially and ensure justice is served. Judges are expected to be independent and free from external pressures, whether from the executive, legislature, or influential private interests. However, in reality, this independence is often compromised. To maintain the judiciary's integrity, the National Judicial Council, NJC, plays a key role. It appoints judges and looks into any misconduct. The NJC is meant to be a watchdog, holding judges accountable and protecting the judiciary from political pressure. But critics argue that its effectiveness has been compromised, citing cases where corrupt judges face little to no consequences for their actions. Another critical institution is the Nigerian Bar Association, NBA, which represents legal practitioners and advocates for the rule of law. The NBA often raises concerns about the judiciary's independence, but it has also been criticized for not doing enough to challenge systemic corruption. In theory, the Nigerian judicial system is designed to ensure fairness and efficiency. Court proceedings are meant to be transparent, timely, and accessible to all citizens. Judges are expected to be impartial arbiters, guided solely by the law and evidence presented before them. Unfortunately, the reality is far from this ideal. Lengthy delays in case resolution, lack of resources, and political interference have turned many courts into symbols of inefficiency and inequality. According to the World Justice Project's Rule of Law Index, Nigeria ranks poorly in judicial independence, with widespread perceptions that the courts are influenced by both government and private interests. The roots of today's challenges can be traced back to the military regimes of the past, which often used the judiciary as a tool for oppression. During these years, the judiciary's independence was systematically eroded, creating a culture of subservience to those in power. Although Nigeria transitioned to democracy in 1999, many of these issues persist, with the judiciary still struggling to assert its independence. For instance, during the 2019 presidential election petitions, questions were raised about the neutrality of the judiciary in adjudicating high-stakes political disputes. Critics argued that some rulings appeared to favor those in power, further eroding public trust in the system. To comprehend the depth of corruption within Nigeria's judiciary, we must examine the systemic issues that have allowed it to fester. Political interference, inadequate remuneration, and a lack of robust accountability mechanisms have collectively undermined the integrity of this vital institution. The judiciary's independence is paramount for a functioning democracy. However, in Nigeria, political influence often permeates judicial processes, compromising impartiality. The appointment and removal of judges are frequently swayed by political considerations, undermining meritocracy and judicial autonomy. For instance, the process of appointing judges is often rigged, with the National Judicial Council (NJC) recommending qualified candidates, but the president and state governors holding substantial power in the final appointment process, leading to politically motivated selections. Moreover, there have been instances where political figures have openly boasted about influencing judicial decisions, further eroding public trust. For example, a senator hinted on the Senate floor that he influenced the decisions of his wife while she was the president of the Court of Appeal.
Particularly my wife, whose freedom and independence I encroached upon while she was in office. And she has been very tolerant and accepted my encroachment and extended her help to my colleagues.
Distinguished, please, I don't think this is a good idea going this direction. It's not a good idea. It's not a good idea, please.
The Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission reported that the judiciary topped its Nigeria Corruption Index. Approximately $9.45 billion was offered and paid as bribes by lawyers to the judicial sector between 2018 and 2020, with a significant portion linked to election litigation. A 2021 report by the U.S. Department of State indicated that corruption is particularly pervasive at election tribunals and in the corruption trials of highly politically exposed persons. The public perception that judges are easily bribed and that litigants cannot rely on the courts to render impartial judgments is widespread. In 2019, there was an incident in Kano State where lawyers were caught attempting to bribe a judge to influence the outcome of an election petition. This incident underscores the challenges of maintaining judicial integrity during election disputes. Joshua Dariye served as the governor of Plateau State from 1999 to 2007. During his tenure, he was accused of embezzling $1.126 billion from public funds, money that was meant for developmental projects in the state. This case represents one of Nigeria's most prominent examples of corruption at the highest levels of governance. Dariye was accused of diverting state funds into private accounts, including $280 million allocated for the Ecological Fund meant to address environmental challenges in Plateau State. Instead of being used for the intended purpose, these funds were allegedly funneled through shell companies and used for personal enrichment. Further investigations revealed that Dariye had moved large sums of money into foreign accounts, including those in the United Kingdom, triggering international interest in the case. Shortly after leaving office, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, filed charges against Dariye, accusing him of 23 counts of money laundering and criminal breach of trust. However, like many high-profile corruption cases, legal proceedings were delayed for years due to procedural challenges and appeals. Dariye was also investigated in the UK, where the London Metropolitan Police found significant evidence of money laundering. He was arrested in a London hotel, but he skipped bail and fled back to Nigeria, where he continued to operate under the protection of political immunity as a serving senator. After over a decade of legal battles, Dariye was convicted in June 2018 by a federal high court in Abuja. He was found guilty on 15 counts of criminal breach of trust and sentenced to 14 years in prison. The sentence was later reduced to 10 years following an appeal. In a controversial move, President Muhammadu Buhari granted Dariye a presidential pardon in April 2022, along with other high-profile convicts, citing compassionate grounds. This decision sparked outrage among Nigerians, with civil society organizations and anti-corruption advocates labeling it a significant setback for the fight against corruption. Adolphus Wabara served as the president of the Nigerian Senate from 2003 until his resignation in 2005. His tenure was marred by a significant bribery scandal that not only led to his resignation, but also highlighted systemic issues within Nigeria's political and judicial systems. In March 2005, President Olusegun Obasanjo publicly accused Wabara of involvement in a N55 million, approximately $400,000 at the time, bribery scheme. The allegations centered around the then Minister of Education, Professor Fabian Osuji, who was accused of offering bribes to Wabara and other legislators to influence the approval of an inflated education budget. This public indictment, broadcasted by the National Television Authority, NTA, bypassed standard legal procedures and led to Wabara's resignation from the Senate presidency. Following his resignation, Wabara, along with Osuji and 5 others, was arraigned before the Federal High Court in Abuja by the Independent Corrupt Practices Commission, ICPC, on April 12, 2005. They faced multiple counts of demanding and receiving bribes and other corrupt practices. Wabara pleaded not guilty, maintaining that the accusations were politically motivated attempts to tarnish his reputation. The defendants were detained for 4 days before being released on bail. Despite the charges, Wabara continued to serve as a senator, and the legal battle extended well beyond his tenure. The case against Wabara experienced numerous delays and legal challenges, reflecting broader inefficiencies within Nigeria's judicial system. In June 2010, the charges were initially dismissed by the court, which described them as unfounded and failing to establish a prima facie case. The judge criticized the federal government's handling of the allegations, labeling it as embarrassing and uncivilized. The judiciary is meant to be a beacon of hope for citizens seeking justice. Yet in Nigeria, judicial corruption has led to widespread distrust in the legal system. When court rulings are perceived as being influenced by bribes or political pressure, ordinary citizens lose faith in the court's ability to deliver fair outcomes. This distrust discourages people from seeking legal redress, leading to a culture of self-help and vigilante justice, which further destabilizes society. A recent survey revealed that 52% of Nigerians believe the judiciary is influenced by corruption, with many citing instances of bribery, favoritism, and undue delays in legal proceedings. Justice delayed is justice denied, and in Nigeria, the judicial system is plagued by protracted legal processes. Corruption exacerbates these delays, as some judges deliberately adjourn cases indefinitely, awaiting bribes or external influence. This practice is particularly harmful to vulnerable populations, who often cannot afford the financial or emotional toll of prolonged legal battles. A case in point is the trial of Adolphus Wabara, which lasted 14 years before ending in acquittal due to insufficient evidence. Such delays not only deny justice to victims, but also embolden perpetrators to continue exploiting systemic inefficiencies. Judicial corruption has significant economic implications. When businesses cannot rely on courts to enforce contracts or resolve disputes fairly, it discourages investment, both domestic and foreign. Investors need assurance that the rule of law will protect their interests, but in a corrupt judiciary, this assurance is absent. According to the World Bank, the lack of a reliable legal framework in Nigeria is a key barrier to economic growth, with the country ranking poorly in global indices for enforcing contracts and property rights. A corrupt judiciary is a threat to democracy itself. When courts are swayed by political influence or financial incentives, they fail to act as a check on the executive and legislative branches of government. This allows those in power to act with impunity, consolidating their control and silencing dissent. For example, controversial rulings in high-profile election cases often spark accusations of judicial bias, undermining the legitimacy of the democratic process. Without an impartial judiciary, the principle of checks and balances collapses, leaving citizens at the mercy of unchecked authority. Corruption in the judiciary often leads to gross human rights abuses. When judges accept bribes to convict innocent individuals or release guilty parties, the fundamental rights of citizens are trampled. Vulnerable groups, including the poor and marginalized, are disproportionately affected as they lack the resources to navigate or influence the corrupt system. Amnesty International has documented cases in Nigeria where individuals were detained for years without trial due to judicial corruption and inefficiencies, violating their right to a fair and timely hearing. The impact of judicial corruption on Nigerian society cannot be overstated. It undermines public trust, stifles economic growth, weakens democracy, and perpetuates human rights abuses. Addressing this issue is not just about reforming the judiciary, it is about rebuilding the foundation of Nigerian society itself. Justice is not a privilege for the few, it is a right for all. To ensure Nigeria's progress and stability, the fight against judicial corruption must remain a national priority.